Good morning, everybody. My name is Nia Carrillo, and I'm a holistic nutritionist and energy healing practitioner. And we are on week 3 of 4 of our In Harmony cycle series. So this week we are talking about exercise and specifically how to connect it to each part of our cycle. There are 4 different phases. So there are 4 different amounts of energy that we will be met with. So stay tuned for that. I'm going to give all of those who want to tune in live a moment or so to connect to this live. But if you are watching this recorded, you can go ahead and fast forward in a couple of seconds where I will get started. So last week we discussed all about, what did we discuss? The weeks before that, we have discussed like how to prevent PMS and just the basics of cycle syncing. And now we're going to get into more specific topics. So this week is exercise and next week is nutrition and supplements. And if you are a huge Organifi fan, stay tuned for that next week because there are great supplements within Organifi's line that can support your cycle to prevent any unwanted PMS symptoms and to get rid of PMS entirely because you don't have to have it to have a period. So, if you have any questions, I will get to them at the end. So stay tuned to have your questions answered just so I can make sure I get through this information in the short amount of time that we have for today. So with exercise, there's a lot of science being done around the cycle and studying women's hormones in comparison to men. So if you remember last week, I had said that men mirror the sun and women mirror the moon, and the moon goes through all these different phases. So to treat the body every single day the same, with the same thing, with the same foods, with the same exercise habits, isn't necessarily serving you. And you might find that naturally your body will want to rest in some periods of your cycle. And that could cause a lot of shame and guilt or a need to force yourself because you feel like you have to meet XYZ goals. And the whole important part to remember about this whole series that we have here inside Organifi is that we want you to feel empowered, ladies. So rather than feeling like a victim to all the hormonal shifts that you experience, this is about giving you more clarity on why you might feel a certain way at a certain time of the month, and maybe even drawing the lines as to why you feel a certain emotion or an energy spike or an energy dip. It will give you much more peace and harmony on your monthly cycle, whether you bleed or not. So I'm going to break this down for each week and what exercises are best for them. Of course, the main thing to remember is to listen to your body, because when you start to listen to your body, it will give you all the resources and information you need to know. So week 1, that is when we start bleeding, if you do have a bleed. So during your period, it's really important to just listen to your body, because some people find that maybe the first couple of days that they're not really high energy. This is probably not when you want to be social. You're probably a little bit more sluggish than usual, and that's to be expected. So lower intense activities, and I'm talking really low intensity, like a yin yoga class or restorative yoga class, a gentle brisk walk, anything that kind of just isn't really focused on building muscle or anything super high intensity would not be recommended during this time. However, if you find that your energy is not so dipped because you've been cycle syncing, or that's just not your usual symptoms, go ahead and exercise, but I would stick to things that are lower intensity in terms of movement. So think like Pilates or yoga. I wouldn't do anything cardio based during this week because your body is going through a hormonal shift. So you don't want to stress it out with doing such high intensity workouts. Estrogen is lower and lowest during this time, so you are less prone to injuries, but this isn't a time to set like personal bests. There is a time and place for that, and we'll discuss it. So keep it gentle. If you don't have a lot of energy, don't feel guilty for taking a rest. If you want to make napping your chosen sport or activity for the week, by all means, again, listen to your body. So as we kind of transition out from bleeding, or that week, if you are on birth control and you start to notice these symptoms come up, or even if you're closer to menopausal age and your cycles are less frequent, we enter into what's called the follicular phase. And also, if you go back to the first video, I will refer to these as different seasons. So that first week is a winter, so really slow, subtle, really introspective time for us as women. As we go into follicular, we can equate this to the season of spring. So your hormone levels begin to rise, as does your energy. So you're probably a little bit more social, but not the most social. That will come in the next week. Your estrogen is a little higher, and research has found that the higher we have estrogen, the more prone to injury we are. So last week, on that first week of our period, we had low energy or low estrogen levels, so we were less prone to injury. But as our estrogen tends to increase during this time, you are less prone to injury. However, there has been some interesting data that has come from research and studies, and they have found that specifically for women, our muscles tend to become more pliable around the hamstrings. So it might be easy for you to overstretch, and then it can also compromise the health of your knees, because the estrogen is rising, so you become more prone to injury. So while your energy is increasing, it still might not be the best time for you to do things like HIIT or anything that would cause kind of like a pounding with the foot on the ground, anything that would kind of condense the knees like that if you jump up and down. So think like jumping jacks, running, jump squats. Probably not the best. So you would probably want to take it down a notch from your highest, most energetic phase. So specific exercises that would be really great would be for you to try something new, actually, and things that kind of challenge you mentally. So think like a dance routine where you have to think about and coordinate. So Zumba sort of activities, even Pilates, where there's a lot of mind-body connection. Yoga classes can also be great if you are a yogi. In any workout that you choose, you want to make sure the week after your period or where your bleed would be is that you are properly warming up. But that actually goes for any week. Warm up is a essential part of a healthy workout. But this is especially important during this week too. Feel free to do cardio if like you are a cardio bunny, but it's not, again, a time for you to go all out. Save that for the next week. So for going into the next week, we have week 3, which is ovulation. This is also known as our summer, so your energy is the highest. This is the peak of estrogen, your follicular stimulating hormone and luteinizing hormone, so FSH and LH. And this all supports you in maturing and releasing the egg. So again, peak of our energy. So if you have like certain fitness goals that you're trying to achieve, maybe personal records like making your mile under a certain amount of time, or perhaps you want to lift a certain amount of weight, this is the time to start to kind of schedule your fitness activities during this peak energy phase. The most important part, whether or not you have those kind of big fitness goals, is that you break a sweat and do maybe your hardest and most challenging exercises. This is also when you are the most social. So going back to the kind of syncing your lifestyle to your cycle, it's really important that you do so with your exercise, and that maybe you go out and try a fitness class, like a boot camp, because you will want to probably naturally be around people. So what better way than to take advantage of all this energy that you have? So things like HIIT, vigorous yoga, if you like hot yoga or yoga sculpt, these would be times to schedule in those activities. Again, just be mindful because your estrogen is high, so it makes you prone to more injuries. So warming up, cooling down, and when we get into nutrition, we'll talk a little bit more about this. But this is going to be so super, super crucial as you kind of wean off this energy. Now, if we looked at everything kind of like a graph like this, where it's a mountain peak, you are right here at the top of the mountain when you are in ovulatory phase. However, you start to slowly dip. So as you go into this next week, which we call fall or our luteal phase, your energy isn't quite its lowest. So as we transition into week 4, probably days 21 to 24. If you have a 28-day cycle, it might be less or more depending. Those days, you still have a little bit of that residual energy from your ovulatory phase. So you can still take advantage of that. So in the beginning, you can do like weight training, running, yoga, very similar to those last week's activities. But toward the end, you want to kind of ease back into what we did in week 1. So week 1, remember, it was more gentle and yin-like activity where napping and walking are your chosen sports. So you can do a little bit bump of that toward the end of your cycle. So think like days 26 to 32 if you have that longer cycle. So a gentle yoga is great, Pilates. Again, none of that jumping up and down HIIT. Reserve that for your peak. If you want to do cardio, maybe you do a hike or anything that's low intensity and doesn't involve a spike of energy. Your estrogen is dipping during this time and your progesterone is increasing. So it's going to be inevitable that you have those ups and downs because there's almost like this reverse of the hormones. So you might feel sluggish, and that's totally okay. Again, listen to your body. It is going to give you all of this knowledge. And the whole point of this, again, is to empower you to know what the heck is going on so you don't feel like you are controlled and ruled by all these fluctuations. And that way you know, like, hey, I'm feeling a little bit sluggish. Oh, well, that makes sense because I'm at the end of my cycle. Or, wow, I really am digging all these group fitness classes. This is a great time for me to be doing this because I'm meeting new people. I'm in the peak of my energy phase, but I'm going to have a little bit of compassion and grace for myself because I know this is going to wean off. I think the most important thing, at least for myself, is realizing that I don't have to be 100% and on top of my game every single week. And when I can learn to ease into the flow, my body actually responds really well. Just from doing this on myself, I kind of cut my workouts in half, if you will. And I've found more physical difference in my stamina, my strength, even in the toning of my muscles. So I encourage you to try it. It's definitely a little bit challenging when you try to do all of the things at once. So if exercise seems to be something that gets stunted or puts to a halt because of your hormonal shifts, maybe you start with just honoring that first week. You know what? I'm going to do just more gentle exercise. And then the next cycle, you focus on doing the second week where you do a little bit more energetic increase. So take this as slow as you need to. We do not want you to get overwhelmed. So that's all I have for this week on exercise. It's very straightforward and to the point. So that's funny. Someone said horizontal running is napping. Yes. So if you have any questions, you can feel free to pop those in now. Like if there's certain workouts, like where you would best fit those in. I hope that was as clear as possible, giving you those tangible examples. I don't see any specific questions, but if you do have them, I always come and check inside the group, so I'm happy to respond to them via chat. I will be here next week, same time, same place, with our final call on doing syncing your nutrition to your cycle, which is super, super important. Just like all facets of it are, but being a holistic nutritionist, it's probably my bread and butter, for the lack of a pun. So I will see you next week. And thank you so much for tuning in live or watching this recording. And happy cycle syncing. Bye.